Hi everyone, I'm Coach Mariana and I'm here today to share with you one traditional Bulgarian dish. I'm originally from Bulgaria and all the traditional recipes kind of bring me back home and remind me of my childhood when my grandma was cooking for me all these amazing dishes, and one of them is called Banitsa. Banitsa is a traditional Bulgarian dish. It's very popular. It's like a pastry. It can be sweet, it can be sour. Today I'm gonna show you the recipe for sour banitsa with eggs, Bulgarian yogurt and feta cheese. And there's two options. You can either buy a phyllo dough from any grocery store and use them, or you can make your own layers of phyllo dough at home, and I'll show you how to do that today. Another twist that I'm going to use in my recipe today is I'm going to use buckwheat flour because I want to make the banitsa gluten-free. And this is the first time I'm experimenting with buckwheat flour, so I'm very curious to see how it's going to come out. So we're going to start first with the dough. For the dough, I need buckwheat flour and a glass of water. And I also need a little bit of salt. In this case, I'm using a Himalayan pink salt. So I'm gonna show you step by step how to make the banitsa today. So stay with me and let's have fun in the kitchen together. For the stuffing, I'm gonna use Bulgarian yogurt. And if you don't find this particular type, you can also use Greek yogurt. And I'm also gonna use a Bulgarian feta cheese you can buy from a website called malinchu.com. I will share the link in the comment section below. And I'm gonna need organic eggs. I'm using 4 eggs because I like to have some more protein, and it's just more filling, more fluffy. When you mix the eggs, the cheese and the yogurt together, the stuffing is gonna be amazing. I am absolutely sure that you're gonna love this pastry. It's gonna be your go-to breakfast or afternoon snack. So let's get started with our dough. So we're starting by pouring the water into a deep bowl. So I'm using a cup of water, and I'm gonna start adding the buckwheat flour to it. Don't be afraid to use your hands. It's gonna be a little messy. You're gonna continue adding the buckwheat flour until you have a soft dough that it's not very sticky, and we're gonna go to the next step. I also added a little bit of regular gluten-free baking flour because the buckwheat flour for some reason was very sticky. So you can use any kind of flour. You can also use a gluten regular flour if you don't mind eating gluten. The only reason I'm not using gluten is because my husband is gluten intolerant, so I'm trying to modify each recipe to the point where he can also enjoy it. And I also like to experiment, so any kind of flour you prefer, you can use it. And with, of course, with regular flour, the process is gonna be a bit easier. I feel like there's more dough around on my fingers than in the plate, but that's part of the process. It's okay. The homemade bread in our culture is something very important, and all the stories, all the rituals involve some sort of involve preparing bread. We're looking at the bread as something sacred, something that you cannot make fun of, something that you have to appreciate, and it's part of our everyday life. So every Bulgarian woman has to know how to make homemade bread, and it's just something of a tradition for us. You see the dough is soft. I'm gonna give it some time to rest. So what I'll do now is I'll cut it into 4 different pieces. it's important to know that if you make too much of the dough, then you can just put it in the freezer and use it another time, and just use as much as you need for today's banitsa. Also, if you visit Bulgaria, banitsa is something that you're gonna find on every corner. It's usually sold for breakfast in bakeries, and you can try different varieties. One of my favorites is stuffed with leeks and rice, or just with leeks and rosemary, but you can do it sweet as well with another one that I absolutely love is just the sugar syrup, walnuts and cinnamon, but the one with the cheese and yogurt is the most traditional. Okay, so now I'm gonna cover the dough for about 15 minutes, and I'm gonna put it in a warm place. You can start your oven and put it at 180 degrees Celsius. As I said, we're gonna use 4 eggs, feta cheese and Bulgarian yogurt. Got something very important, and that's club soda. So I don't use baking soda because I want my filling to be more fluffy and the banitsa to be a little thicker. I'm gonna add a little bit of soda water to create that fluffiness. It's absolutely enough. You can also add beer. It gives it a very nice flavor. So I'm adding the whole container of yogurt. That's about 16 ounces. You don't need to add any salt because the feta is salty enough. And if you add additional salt, your banitsa is gonna be extremely salty, and we don't want that. So I'm gonna use half of this feta cheese. Gonna make it on little crumbles. We're mixing everything together. Our dough is already rested. Now we're gonna start making the layers of the banitsa. So I'm just gonna grab one of these, put the rest on the side, and we're gonna use some more flour because it's gonna be easy to make the baking sheet. Okay. Another thing, right before I start, I'm gonna put some butter or olive oil on my dough, just like that. They have to be extremely thin. It's gonna be important to cut the dough in the correct form because our dough is not doesn't have the same elasticity as a regular dough would have because it's gluten-free, so it breaks easily. So I'm gonna just use a knife and cut the piece that I need. It was hard to create the layers of dough on the countertop, so because the dough is not very flexible because it's gluten-free, so I use a baking sheet. So here I already have 2 layers. So you do a layer of the dough and then you put the stuffing and then another layer and the stuffing. So now I'm gonna add the 3rd layer. So very carefully lift the baking sheet. It doesn't look very pretty, but it's gonna be absolutely amazing, I promise you. So that's how you transfer it into the baking form. Okay, and now I'm gonna add the next layer, so just very carefree all over the baking sheet. Especially in the corners. Okay, and on to the next one. If you're using regular flour, you're not gonna have this problem. The dough is gonna be nice and soft. It's gonna be very easy to create your baking sheets. But because I'm choosing gluten-free, it's a little more challenging. I'm not gonna give up just because it's hard. I really want to give it a try, and also make sure that my husband can enjoy this amazing dish, because he absolutely loves banitsa, and since the moment we found out that he's gluten intolerant, he wasn't able to have any, so he'll be very happy when he comes home tonight. I have a little bit more of the stuffing left, so I'm just gonna pour it over the banitsa. Gonna shake it a little bit, and I'm gonna add some melted butter on top. In Bulgaria, we call this banitsa selska banitsa, or in translation that means banitsa made in the village. The reason for that is because all the grandmothers back home like to make their phyllo dough homemade, and they don't just buy it from the store. But please, if this is too complicated for you and you don't see yourself going through this whole process, just buy a regular phyllo dough. You can find it at any grocery store, and follow the same steps. A layer of phyllo dough, a layer of stuffing, another layer of phyllo dough, layer of stuffing, until you run out of stuffing or phyllo dough. So now it's time to put our banitsa in the oven for about 30 to 45 minutes, and I'll show you the final result. I hope you're gonna like it. Our banitsa is now ready. I just got it off the oven, and I'm gonna wait a couple of moments. Look at these amazing colors, golden and gray from the buckwheat flour. I can't wait to try it. I'm just gonna cover it with the towel and wait a couple of minutes, and then I'll cut it into pieces and I'll show you the result. I hope you enjoyed today's recipe. It's always a pleasure for me to share with you something that I like, something that I recently tried, and it's gonna become part of my menu. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope you're gonna enjoy these recipes. Any questions or comments, please DM me or place it under the video. I would love to answer all your questions, and I would love to hear what you think about this recipe. Again, if you don't feel like making the dough yourself, just buy a regular phyllo dough and create the layers the same way I did. And I promise you this is gonna be one of your favorite dishes going forward. So thank you so much for being with me today. I'll see you again next week with some more healthy recipes, health advices, and stay healthy.